Okay. There you go.
Hey, something.
All right, man. Yeah. So where was what was that there? Oklahoma, Texas. So what you think Oklahoma's got it this year? You think they can get in there?
If that QB change can prevent them from having other issues, they just had their big uh, Texas was their big test number one. Oklahoma State is going to be test number two. But if they can get past those two tests, well, they've already got past one. If they can get past Oklahoma State, I think it's looking like it.
I still can't help but think that Lincoln Riley's 1-8-5 away from being a Cliff Kingsbury.
You think so?
Yeah, I just still can't. I've said that or thought that ever since it happened, but I may be wrong, but I just keep thinking that
Well,
he's 1-8-5
if you're going to say that, then you have to wonder: is he really want to join the SEC? Because you say he's 1-8-5 away from being Clint Kingsbury. If he were to stay in the Big 12, I don't see where that 8-5 is going to come from. But now you're in the SEC, that 8-5 is going to be pretty easy to come about.
Oh, very easy. Maybe a 6-6. We'll see. It's got a I can't believe Oklahoma still after all these years cannot play defense.
Well,
for all those years.
your point about Alabama is, I think, pretty good, because I think it describes the whole Big 12 in general. Mm-hmm. Is that you can't be that finesse team on offense and then be rough and tumble on defense. There's going to be a give or take, because I think we've seen it. What was it, the Alabama game against Auburn 2 years ago, where you still had great defensive talent. Matter of fact, the Alabama Ole Miss game from last year, Alabama's defensive talent was still top notch, but when you get out there and you're somebody is giving it to you, you're going to take it.
That was the greatest. That was one of the greatest game plans I've ever seen Kiffin have with them too. He called Alabama's defense out of.
And that will be that's the one thing that I want to see Georgia get into, is a game with someone who's going to actually give it to them on offense. I just don't know if that team is out there.
I don't know. I've not seen anybody that has that type of physicality to, bust them in the chops. So forth. I think Alabama still has that capability, but on offense, I just don't know about. That doesn't. I've not seen it on defense. And I think there's talent out there. They're just not. They're not used to that. I hate to go back on them finding their way again, but we'll see with Georgia. Pac-12. Anything to talk about there?
I'm looking at it right now, and I don't see anything. Pac-12 is just there.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to win it. Arizona State, Oregon, somebody's going to win it, but I don't know that we have to pay any attention to it.
So now we got to come back to the Big Ten.
Now the Big Ten, even though we kind of have a light week in the Big Ten, we had a huge game last week with Iowa and Penn State, where, in all honesty, Iowa probably won that game because Kentucky's 6-0 right now. Because Kentucky's starting quarterback was a transfer from Penn State, and if he's still at Penn State, Iowa probably loses that game last week. But
Really?
yeah,
I didn't realize that.
yeah. He left Penn State last year. Well, I presume last year. Came to Kentucky, and when they needed that's kind of the thing that bothers me so much about these quarterbacks who are so quick to leave schools is that, and I would like to think that the Texas A&M upset of Alabama last week would send a message to some of these quarterbacks is that it's okay to be a backup. And even though you don't want to be a backup, you're going to get your shot. Because, matter of fact, think about it. We saw it with Jalen Hurts. We saw it with, God, I can't even remember, Bama quarterback from last year who stuck behind Tua.
Oh, Mac Jones.
Mac Jones. We saw it with Mac Jones. And again, last week is a brilliant example of what didn't happen. Now, yes, Kentucky is having a great season right now. They're 6-0, sitting on top of the world. 9 times out of 10, it's all going to come crashing down tomorrow. And when it comes crashing down, it doesn't matter what's going to happen the rest of the season for Kentucky. Nobody's probably going to care anything about them.
Yeah, it'll be fun while it lasted.
Huh?
It'll be fun while it lasted.
It was fun while it lasted. But now, if you're that quarterback, if you're still at Penn State, then yeah, you had to sit behind Clifford. But all it takes is one good hit by a good defense to knock Clifford out the game. You're on national TV against the number 4 team in the country. You're number 3, and the ball is in your hand. What do you think he's going to get more? What you take that quarterback? What do you think he would get more credit from? Winning that game for Penn State last week, or winning those 6 games for Kentucky prior to this week?
You make a good point there, but however, I mean, I can go back and say Justin Fields, if he hadn't left Georgia, would he ever been in a national championship game?
That's true, but now
Kyler Murray.
Now, both of those situations, I can make the argument that it wasn't just being a backup. There were Justin Fields. If you look at what he was able to do at Ohio State, was he ever going to be able to do that at University of Georgia at that time? Was Kirby going to allow him to be in that kind of offense?
I agree with that.
And you take Kyler Murray. Was Kyler Murray at Texas A&M ever going to actually be in a position to do what he did at Oklahoma?
No. Those are good points right there.
So, like I said, I just think it's, and I realize that there are some situations where, yeah, you do need to move on. I just think that if I'm number 2, if I'm the clear-cut number 2 quarterback at a good, strong Power 5 program like a Penn State, I stick around.
Yeah, as you made a point, I'll go with Jalen. Yeah, when Jalen left, that was the right time to move on. I mean, he did all he could do at Alabama. Alabama had moved to Tua, and he had a phenomenal year at Oklahoma that year. And now he's started in the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean,
and plus,
not too many quarterbacks.
And plus, Jalen's situation.
Kind of
Jalen's situation was kind of a different one because he legitimately got beat out.
Yeah, he did.
He legitimately got beat out, and he got beat out by he got beat out by a younger quarterback. So he was not going to be able to like this guy at Kentucky. I don't know. I don't know what year he. I don't know what year he is, but I'm going to assume that he's younger than Clifford. So he hypothetically could be able to stick around and lead Penn State next year or beyond.
Hey, well, Jalen, when have you ever seen a guy that was 27-2 as a starter in the SEC Freshman of the Year then lose his starting job?
Never.
I've never seen that before. Man.
Matter of
So
fact, the only situation that even comes close to that is was the situation with Trevor Lawrence in Clemson.
Yes, that's true.
Where Kelly Bryant, I want to say Kelly Bryant, he only lost.
I was trying to think of his name.
I want to say Kelly Bryant only lost 1 or 2 games at Clemson, but it was just clear that, hey, there was a what's the word that I want to use? There was a talent that there was a unmatched talent there that had to be on the football field. And that's the only way for a quarterback of that caliber to lose his job.
Yeah, I mean, a guy who I worked with, he kept telling me that year before, he kept saying, man, Tua's the best quarterback. Tua's the best quarterback. I never really paid that much to it when he was playing. And then when I finally seen him out there, I was like, God, the accuracy on that guy was just unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And then now I'm looking at the stats this year, and it's like, maybe Mac Jones was the best quarterback out of all 3 of them.
You know, it's that was a, and you know, I would tell people that to go back to my point. If you're Mac Jones, where would Bama have been last? I mean, they probably still would have been a great team. But where would Bama have been if Mac Jones had decided to just leave? Because he came in the same class that Tua came in.
Yeah, the first year when the year that, because he was redshirted that year, and in the year that Tua and Jalen was playing the first half, part of the third, Mac was they'd bring him in. He'd play most of the second half,
mm-hmm.
And I would watch him. I was like, God, this guy could be playing for just about every team in the SEC right now besides Alabama.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't he a 4-star he's a 4-star prospect.
He was a 4-star prospect out of Jacksonville, Florida, or somewhere in Florida.
Yeah.
And I was like, this guy could be starting for every team in the SEC right now. Like, he's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And then that next, stayed on the next year, stayed behind Tua, and yeah, I mean, he could have left, but no, he, put his time in, sat on the bench, and all worked out for him.
To me, like I said, we're kind of in the same school as far as age goes and all of that. To me, that's what quarterbacks used to do. You used to sit back and you used to wait your time, and then you would get your opportunity, and then you run with it. And to me, that makes you a better quarterback.
Yeah, you would start as a redshirt junior. That's when you'd take the field. You'd be, redshirted, sit behind all those guys, and that's when you come on. Florida State had all those redshirt juniors up under battle.
I remember Florida State, and another situation was Mike Leach. When Mike Leach first went to Texas Tech, he would always have when he first went to Texas Tech, he had I want to say it might have been Kingsbury. I want to say Kingsbury might have been his quarterback when he was at Texas Tech, his first quarterback. But and he was there for a couple of years. But then after Kingsbury graduated, there was like a run of Sonny Cumbie, Cody Hodges.
Wow.
It was just every year they would have another redshirt senior quarterback who had just been in the program that digested the offense, and they would just come and I want to say B.J. Simons, and I want to say every quarterback every year they would reset the record for like the most. I want to say it was like most passing yards and most touch. They were reset some kind of record. And it was just because each one came in ready to go. They came in ready to go straight off without having any, because they were all redshirt seniors each year, and that was the case between every quarterback between Kingsbury and Graham Harrell.
Yeah, who was the two at Florida State that was seniors, and one of them didn't even start that year, and he ended up winning the Super Bowl with the
Brad Johnson.
Brad Johnson.
Yeah, it was that. Like I said, that was the formula. You would stick behind and you would wait your turn. And Shane is that's it. Wake Forest, who I guess that is the one good thing we need to talk about from the ACC is Wake Forest. They are consistent because they redshirt their freshmen, and everybody stays the full 5 years, except for Jamie Newman, who I don't know what Jamie Newman was thinking. But yeah, that's how you build. That's how you build. Like I said, to me, that's why football programs get built, is by you come into the program, you stay around, and that breeds competition. Why run away from competition? Stick around and compete.
Yeah. When you're leaving after a junior season, you're never going to think about what might have been. I wish they would be forced to stay around. But again, going back, thinking about last year though, how Saban got Najee and Smith to come back is beyond me.
Well, I think it's because Saban has extended, because that's not the first time that he's had a situation like that where he's had guys come back to school who weren't expected to come back or who could have gone pro, but it's because those guys had something to prove. Because I want to say, how long had it been since they won a national championship before last year? Because they won it as freshmen, and then they didn't win it as sophomores and juniors, right?
Right. They won it 17, did it in 18 and 19. So yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't that recruiting class wasn't that supposed to be like the all-time greatest recruiting class or something like that?
It seems like everyone.
So
every year.
But you think about it, you come in as a freshman and you win the national championship, and then you lose it the next year, you lose the next year. At some point you start to say, hey, we're supposed to be the greatest of all time. We've been falling off the last couple of years instead of getting better. So I think that class has something to prove.
I think somehow he gets in their head with that. I don't know how else you can explain, Smith and Najee coming back. I mean, because they was sure up their stock.
And there's something else to it. I not being a former player, I can't say how much that might. I can't say how much this might be a possibility. But to me, when I just think about it, if I'm a star at a school like Alabama, and I know that if I go pro, I'm gonna be a high draft pick. Although Harris did end up with I guess you could say probably a decent situation in Pittsburgh, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to end up in a bad situation with whatever pro team you get drafted to. Why wouldn't I want to stay at Alabama instead of going to Jacksonville or what other?
That's a good point, because you're going to yeah.
I mean, hell, Trevor Lawrence has already lost more games in his first pro season, the first third of his first pro season, than he probably has lost his whole life.
Yeah, that's that whole that whole situation down there. That's a dumpster fire.
Oh, well, whatever Meyer was saying, thank God for John Gruden.
Somebody asked me about that the other night, Gruden going somewhere, and I said, I want to, I seen that they said, he's making some emails, racist and sexist and anti-gay statements. I said, I want to see exactly what was in those emails before I pass total judgment on Gruden, because the way society is today, anybody can be offended over something, and I've seen stuff get blown up way out of proportion. So I'm going to reserve judgment on Gruden before I actually see what he said on that. I can't imagine. And of course, I've seen people do stupid stuff before, but it just looks to me that John Gruden would not open himself up like that. What's your take on it?
You know what? I have seen the emails, and
Have you?
I think he could have gotten away when he starts talking about the Michael Sam stuff with the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
He could have gotten away because a lot of what he said was he's this is not to excuse it. This is not to excuse it. But a lot of the stuff that got passed off as being anti-gay slurs or whatever was how guys talk. Guys say,
Yeah.
"Oh, that F word, that F word that rhymes with maggot," or that they just casually throw that word around. And it's not necessarily that they're calling a person gay. It's just that's just the insult of choice.
Right.
So, but when he gets into the Michael Sam thing, he is specifically being anti-gay because he was using Michael Sam's being gay as a reason to say, oh, that's the only reason why he's getting drafted and blah blah blah, and so yeah, that was bad. And then the Morris Smith thing, that was bad. And then the sharing pictures of scantily clad cheerleaders and all that that's why Washington is being that's why this whole controversy is a controversy in the first place, is because apparently that's something that they did in Washington. That's bad, but that's the whole thing about the whole Gruden thing. And I'm not sure how we could do this, or if it would even be possible to do this. It just makes me want to see what everybody else's emails are like.
Yeah, that's a good point.
This is from my perspective. This is just from my perspective. John Gruden, apparently these emails go back to, I want to say, like 2016. When did the Colin Kaepernick thing happen? When did that start blowing up? That was like 2016, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, matter of fact, when did Michael Sam when was Missouri? When did Missouri go to the SEC championship game?
They went in 2013 and 2014.
Okay, so this is going back to at least like 2016, 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at what John Gruden was arguably the most visible NFL voice at ESPN, who is the loudest sports broadcaster around, and these emails were around back then. Then he gets hired by the Oakland Raiders to be basically the god of their football team. He's the master of he's given full control over the football program. These emails were out there. These emails he's been back at Oakland for what, about 3 or 4 years?
This was his 4th season, I believe.
Oh, okay, 4 seasons. These emails were sitting there in the background all this time. At least Bruce Allen, at the very least, had access to them.
Right.
I don't know how big corporate organizations work. I would assume emails are monitored, but if I would like to think that emails are monitored, and that you just can't have. I don't know. But at least you at least have one high-profile NFL executive who has access to these emails. And obviously, because he's an active participant in the conversation, he's not going to say anything. But that just, like I said, that just makes me wonder what else is out there. What other conversations are being had out there?
I mean, you got to at least be like Hillary and acid wash those things, right?
Yeah. Like I said, I'm just from my perspective as a black man, I just want to know what else is out there.
Oh, I mean, there's no telling what's being said. I mean, if they're putting that kind of stuff out there and just dangling it out there, there's no telling what's being said.
Yeah, but you know what? It's kind of fun. You know what my biggest takeaway is from this, and this is maybe going to be borderline. I don't know if you want to say racist, but the conversations that they were having in these emails, to me, seems like things that most normal people text each other. Do 50-something-year-old white men not text each other? Do they not have text messages? Why are they sending these? Why are they sending these emails? Like me and my family, my sister and my nieces and my nephew, we have text groups where we text stuff to each other. And not say we don't have the same kind of conversations like what John Gruden was having with Bruce Allen and all the rest of it. But it's the same theory. It's the same basic idea. Why are they emailing this stuff to each other? And like I said, because that's why I said I would like to think in a big corporation, your email should be monitored. Am I not thinking? Do they not monitor emails? Because like I said, you can.
Well,
emails exist on the server.
You talking about text messages? Remember, that's what got Of course, he was using. Well, that's what got both of them really. Of course, he was making phone calls, but you remember Houston Nutt at Ole Miss? He was text messaging that reporter from a university phone, and then Hughes Freeze was calling the call girl service from a university phone.
Yeah.
Like, man, why didn't you go buy a burner phone?
Why don't you have your own? Why don't you have your own? Like I said, I've never been able to work for a company that provides a phone for me. But even if I did, I'm not going to use my company phone as my phone.
No. And Hugh Freeze, I was thinking, man, what was you think? Whoever found that number, they knew what they was looking for.
Yeah.
To go back there and trace your number.
And here's the thing. You're a Bama fan, so you know all the stories about what was the big lineman that Ole Miss was supposed to have gotten back in the day, that the one that not Ole Miss, Tennessee, the one that Phil Fulmer got Alabama in trouble for.
Oh God, he was a defensive tackle.
He ended up dying, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he did die.
Yeah.
He was out of Memphis.
You're in the SEC.
Means was his name?
I think so.
I think his name was Means. I think he got like $200,000, and it equaled out to like $20,000 a tackle. And I remember they asked Mark Rick about it, and he said, "That's quarterback money, ain't it?"
Well, like first got that. You're in the SEC, and you know that in the SEC, if someone can turn on you, they're going to turn on you. So why would you be? Why have, like you said, all these burners? Get a burner. Do something. Just don't talk. Don't be using your company. But you asked the question: how did Arkansas? Well, not was it Arkansas? Bobby Petrino was. How did Bobby Petrino get in trouble?
Remember, he was riding around on that motorcycle with that co-ed, and
depending on that was Bobby Petrino. He had the accident.
Did he have an accident, or did her boyfriend beat the hell out of him?
Well, that's what nobody could do. Nobody could figure out, because he just shows up at the press conference with this with the
thing around his neck. Yeah. And like he caught a lot of blows to the face to me. So you tell me, did he have an accident, or that guy beat the hell out of him? I think the guy beat the hell out of him.
You probably did.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I was like, I've never been to Little Rock, but I know with you being the head coach there, you had to be visible. What was you thinking leaving there with her on the back. I mean, can you imagine Saban getting on the back of a motorcycle leaving Tuscaloosa with some girl? I mean, or anybody from anywhere.
That's why Nick Saban is Nick Saban, and that's why Bobby Petrino is Bobby Petrino.
I mean, the guy who I loved him to death, I thought he's funny as hell. Pappy Price when he's in Alabama, and he's at a strip club in Pensacola. And I know where that strip club is. That Sammy's down there. And I guess they would have never thought that. You know, you're the head coach at Alabama. And he's like, you don't even know who you are, man. You're the most visible guy
in the state.
Probably, I mean, in the especially even in Pensacola, which is lower Alabama. I mean, everybody down there knows who you are, and you just walk into a strip club down there. You know, that guy, you know, that Mal Moore already had him in the office earlier and told him, said, look, you and your assistants are the life of way too many parties down here. Because they packed up and went to Tuscaloosa, and all their wives and stuff was back in, what was it, Olympia, Washington or whatever it is?
Pullman. You talking about Mike Price? Yeah, Pullman. The Palouse. Backwoods, Washington.
Yeah, they're all up there, and that's when Alabama, I think, had been voted the number 3 party school in America. So you're in Tuscaloosa, and your wives and families up there. Oh yeah, they was living it up. You got a university credit card.
He never actually coached the game at. Was it him or Francione actually coached at Alabama, right?
Yeah, Francione was there 2 years. He was the one that was the hold the rope. You know, tell all the players, hold the rope, let's get through this probation, hold the rope. And you know, Dip to Texas A&M. He got fired in May, I think, after a golfing event down there, and he probably would have survived that. Which I don't know what he was thinking, but you know, had he not got the girls out of the hotel room, he left them in the hotel room. And they was ordering it up there that morning on room service.
That's crazy.
And called him. He had to leave the golf outing to go back to the hotel room to close out the account. That's when all came to light.
I was thinking he had an issue. He had a little issue too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah, he
before we go, I wanted to touch on one last game.
Okay.
I don't know if you paid any attention to or if you have any thoughts on it. Michigan State at Indiana.
Oh wow, I haven't even thought on that one.
Well, now, let me key you in on some things. Do you realize that Indiana now? A lot of people are talking about Indiana's having a very disappointing season because they're sitting at 2-3 right now.
Right.
The 3 teams that Indiana has lost to: Cincinnati, Iowa, Penn State. They have a total of 1 loss, and that 1 loss came in a game where one of them had to lose because it was Iowa against Penn State. So, Indiana, on paper, 2-3, but those 3 losses are arguably a murderer's row of losses. Is this the week that Michigan State falls back to earth by catching an Indiana team Indiana's gonna beat somebody this year?
No, it could very well be.
They're maybe not the top 25 team that everybody thought they were going to be based off of last year, because going back to our early conversation, but Indiana is still a good enough team that they're going to beat somebody. Is Michigan State going to be that team?
What's the injury situation like?
They look like they're both pretty healthy. I think I think Indiana is having some issues with their quarterback, but that's also based on about the fact that he's just struggling. But I think that I think Indiana's going to beat Michigan State.
I'll have to mark that one now and look for it tomorrow. I've had so much. You think they're going to beat them?
I think they're going to beat them. I think that they're going to beat somebody, because they're still going to have to play Michigan, and they're still going to have to play Ohio State, and I'm not sure who else they draw out of that at the Big Ten West. So yeah, it's going to be they still have to play. They play Ohio State next week, and they play Michigan in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So between Michigan State, Ohio State, and Michigan, I think they beat at least one of those teams. And Michigan State is, for my money, the worst out of those teams. So yeah, I'm gonna say Indiana beats them.
Usually it seems like for some reason those good Big Ten games are a morning game too. So hopefully that is in a morning game.
It is. It's 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock on FS1.
I wonder why that is. They always have those good games in the Big 12 or the Big 10 early.
The Big Ten, the Fox, who has the contract with the Fox has the first choice out of the Big Ten. And they have the first choice out of the Big Ten, Pac-12, and the Big 12. Because ESPN has their big games on at night, their biggest games, and because the SEC has the 3:30 window on CBS, Fox makes a big point out of having their biggest games at 12.
I mean, that's a smart move to do that. I mean, put that game on that early.
Yeah, like I said, it's part of their because it leads directly. Their pregame show leads directly into the games. They have a big game on Fox, and then they have the big game on Fox on Fox Sports.
Okay, because that was well, yeah. I'll make sure I turn into that one because usually leaves a lot to be desired for those early games.
Yeah, Michigan State and Indiana is going to be on FS1. Oklahoma State and Texas is going to be on Fox. Both of those are going to be darn good games.
I'll make sure. Yeah, I'll make sure I get up to them. And we've got cut this now. We get through.
We got Shane giving a comment. He says Michigan. He's saying Michigan State by 14. He's saying
300 yards on the ground.
He's saying Indiana's not going to be able to stop the Spartans' running game, which they are averaging around 300 yards a game. They have a very strong running game, but a big part of this is just, a big part of this is just feel. I just feel that Indiana is going to beat one of those three teams, and I think that Michigan State is the most beatable of those three teams. So I'm saying I think they beat them.
Yeah, just outscore them.
Huh?
Just outscore them.
Yeah, that's it. But Shane does make a good point that Michigan State and Michigan, you've been talking about how you want to return to ground and pound football. You should check out the state of Michigan because they are grounding it and pounding it.
Because I was thinking the other day, I was meant to bring this up. Is like, we never see more. You remember them talking about the Midwestern Farm Boy? They had the big fat rolls. They had their jerseys cut off right at the chest. You don't ever see that anymore, man. The fat rolls hanging over the stomach and jerseys cut off at the chest. I mean, just leaning on you and like if they had to be athletic, just lean on you and just lay out and just moving for 3 yards and just keep moving it. I mean, you don't ever see that anymore. Okay, now Shane is also saying he's saying that Michigan is very beatable. He's saying that Michigan is the team that Indiana might get them. Huh? The Michigan State should have lost to Nebraska too. You know what? Michigan State did. I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago about how those week 0 and week 1 games really didn't show us anything. Right. Nebraska is arguably the greatest. If you look at Nebraska, Illinois, that game, now that we're 7 weeks into the season, that game makes no sense. Because Nebraska is, I want to say they're 3-3. Nebraska is probably the best 3-3 football team that you could possibly have because, like I said, they should have beaten. They had a chance to beat Michigan. They had a chance to beat Michigan State, and they had a. If not for those 2 missed kicks, they had Oklahoma. So, and you look at it, those are 3 undefeated teams. I said Indiana. Matter of fact,
Nebraska has better losses. I said that Indiana probably had the best the best set of losses. Nebraska's got the best set of losses. Well, no, Nebraska's Nebraska's 3-2 and 4. What is Nebraska's record?
They lost to Illinois. I remember now going back to that Illinois game the first week
So
of the
Nebraska's
season.
got 4 losses. So yeah, you take that fourth loss. You take that Illinois loss is just like that Illinois loss sticks out like a sore thumb, because their other 3 losses are close game to Oklahoma, close to Michigan State, and close to Michigan. That's and then you look at it and you just say, how did they lose to Illinois? It's nobody knows. But
No, I don't. And I remember watching that because you was the one telling me, said, "Hey, man, that game's coming on that next day," and I was like, "Okay, let me check that out." And yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they lost. How that game now doesn't make any sense at all. You're right.
yeah, like I said, and if you look back on it, that week, those first couple, the week 0 and the week 1 games, like I said, none of them make any sense. A whole lot of them, none of them make any sense right now. But like I said, that Illinois-Nebraska game is the biggest one.
Yeah, this will be the first. This will be the first weekend. I'm back living alone again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I told you about a friend in there. I mean, I was taking him to the hospital or taking him to the doctor yesterday or 2 days ago, trying to jump out of the car, and I've never been around that before. I've never seen somebody go down that quick, but it's sad, man.
Mm.
And I don't know what's going on with there.
You know what? I'm looking at it. This looks like a week that we shouldn't have. It looks like it's Texas, Oklahoma State looks like a good game. In ACC country, NC State, Boston College, that's a good game. Ole Miss, Tennessee, that looks like it should be a good game. But really, this looks
Ole
like
Miss, Tennessee.
Yeah. Florida, LSU.
Yeah, that's right.
That theoretically that should be a good game. But you're looking up and down this schedule, it's not a really enticing week. I wouldn't be surprised if there aren't some big upsets this week. This is the kind of week that looks when you just browse the schedule, you don't see much that really. I mean, theoretically, Georgia and Kentucky it's the number 1 team against number 11, but let's be honest, does anybody really think that Kentucky is the 11th best team in the country?
I mean, they may be the 11th best team in the country, but there's such a drop off between the first 3 or 4 and the next 8 and the next 4 after that. I mean, I wouldn't argue they're not the 11th best, but it's just not like how it was years ago when there really wasn't that big of a drop off between 1 and 16.
Right.
I mean,
and then Shane mentions that Clemson and Syracuse. You know what? Clemson at Syracuse. That's a Clemson at Syracuse. That looks like that. I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't end up being an upset. Or even a close, just a decent game. Because, like I said, DJ. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. I still don't know that he's been tested on the road.
Mm-mm.
And then he brings up Cal at Oregon. That's another one. And he makes a good point. Cal is a pretty good team. I think they had a close loss at TCU. They had a close loss with Nevada. And they have a close loss with Washington. The only team that's really gotten the best of them is Washington State. But Cal is a team that it wouldn't shock me if they beat Oregon. Like I said, I think this is a week that we might see some games that it's the kind of week where you browse the schedule and you say, wow, this doesn't even look like a good week. Because even Florida LSU, that should be a good game, but I'm looking at Florida LSU and I'm just like, that game doesn't really interest me.
No, and then when years gone by, he's like, man, you'd be pumped over a Florida
Yeah.
LSU game. It's kind of like, I mean, there's, because I was thinking that I was just going back to some years in my mind, and since Spurrier left Florida, and you take away the Urban Meyer years, it's been really mediocre at Florida.
It has been. It has that. Well, that's what Mullen is supposed to fix.
I mean, you look at you take that away. I mean, you had Muschamp was a disaster, and then McElwain was a disaster. I mean, where he came up with that stuff that's going to kill his family. So aside from that close call last year, Florida's been going to the SEC championship game, getting blowed out by Alabama.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's been from that, except for that's 2006, 7, 8, and I guess 2009 too. They went back to the SEC championship game. They got blown out by Alabama, but you take away those few years there, it's been a mediocre run at Florida.
Yeah. Shane is saying that LSU is it as you know what, I'm not going to disagree that they're not that bad, but they aren't LSU. They aren't what, and I think that's what we get when we talk about Orgeron and why Orgeron might be fired. They're not where LSU should be, but he does bring up a good point, and I wouldn't be surprised if LSU wins that game. That would
I wouldn't be surprised.
That would not shock me.
I don't think Florida's that great. LSU's lost 3 games to, and I know something like Kentucky again. LSU, even if it's at Lakes, they shouldn't be losing by 3 touchdowns to Kentucky.
No.
I mean, that's inexcusable. I mean, even if you lost in a close game, the fans probably wouldn't like it, but you don't lose by 3 scores. I mean, 3 touchdowns to Kentucky.
Well, and that's the thing that I kind of, when Les Miles was there, yeah, his issue was that he couldn't beat Nick Saban once Nick Saban got it rolling.
Right.
Okay, that's fine. But Les Miles was at least, matter of fact, the game that he got fired for was that game where they lost to Auburn, like on a last second.
Yes, they lost to Auburn down there on the last second play. I think that they scored and there was time had ran out, I believe. LSU scored, but the time had ran out. I think that's what happened.
Yeah, they put time back on, and then Shane is making a good point. Florida isn't as good this year as they were last year. Their defense isn't good. Their secondary is terrible. I agree. That's like I said. I think Florida that game would, and that's why I said, because Florida is still. I want to say they're still ranked, but like I said, there's a lot of these, and I think that goes back to your point is that once you get past, I'm going to say the top 8 or so.
I'll go along with
that. Georgia, Bama. The Texas A&M thing was a shock, but Bama's still Bama. The top 3 or 4 out of the Big Ten. Matter of fact, the top 5, if you want to include Iowa. You have the top 4 out of that East Division, and then Iowa out of the West. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. And matter of fact, Oklahoma State really hasn't proven much. So once you get past that tier of teams in Cincinnati, there's more of a separation between the top 5 or 6 teams than there is between the rest of the top 25. So,
they're singing the end of the Saban dynasty, and one day it's going to obviously end. But I was thinking about this the other day. They've pretty much it started before it ever began when that near miss at Auburn in 2009. Auburn holds on there and beats Alabama. And then 2011, it started getting said when Alabama lost 9-6. Was Miles really the best coach? And then 2012, it really started when he lost to Manziel. Saban should retire. He can't handle this. And 2013, the kick six. He was robbed of his masterpiece. 3 in a row, 4 out of 5 years. Well, then he comes back 2014, gets beat by Ohio State in the playoffs, and 2015 he wins the national championship. And then he comes back, 2017 he wins one. And
he mentioned Shane is back with another. He mentions that Penn State doesn't lose Clifford. He's talking about Iowa because Iowa's not as. Yeah, Iowa is a. You have to respect the 6 that's by there. That's in that win column. But Iowa really is a underwhelming team. But like I said, they are 6. They or are they 5-0 or 6-0?
I think 6-0.
They are 6-0.
You're right.
They are 6-0.
You say underwhelming. They're not a team that's going to grab you.
No, they're not going to grab you. And he makes a good. He kind of makes the point that I was making earlier. Now, if Clifford, if Penn State's quarterback doesn't get out, go get injured, Iowa probably gets blown out in that game. What I was saying is that even if Clifford does get injured, if the quarterback who's at Kentucky right now is still there backing him up, Penn State still wins that game. Penn State, they had a quarterback who was just totally not prepared to play last week, and that's what cost them that game. If they get decent quarterback play, they win that game going away.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right.
It's gonna be fun tomorrow.
I think that's just about it for this week. We'll be back tomorrow for the post game.
Yeah. We're back tomorrow now. I got my phone back and
tomorrow about 11.
11 your time?
Yeah.
Sounds good, man. I'll see you then.
All right, sounds good. And thank you for the great comments, Shane.
What now?
I was telling Shane, great thanks for the comments.
Oh yeah, thanks, Shane. Tune in tomorrow night. We'll be back for it. Here again. See y'all.
See you.